Revealed. The incredible journey of a rancher who tamed a wild girl's untamed heart in 30 days. Jake Thompson's life had become a tightrope walk, balancing on the ever-thin wire of financial strain and a legacy he felt tethered to. The ranch stretched out before him, a windswept expanse where memories lingered like shadows. Each fence he checked, each hoof print he brushed away, echoed like a reminder the weight of land payments loomed large. His father's death left a vacuum filled only by the unrelenting grip of duty. How many more nights could he twist and turn, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he could keep his family's legacy alive? One shoulder crunched against a worn fence post. Jake forced himself to breathe, but the air felt heavier with each inhale. He remembered his father's voice, strong and unwavering, cementing values of perseverance and loyalty deep in his marrow. Yet he felt a yearning and itch in the back of his mind, daring him to escape. The ground that held his roots was also a chain, and he struggled against its pull. Despite knowing he had to keep the ranch afloat, a simmering resentment crept in, whispering promises of a freer life. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of laughter, wild and unrestrained. He turned, startled by the sight of Lila, a woman who seemed forged from the essence of the very plains he labored. Sun-kissed hair tumbled down her back as she stood defiant, her eyes twinkling with the kind of mischief that ignited a flame in his chest. Suddenly, his regimented world felt mundane, suffocatingly predictable. How could he continue in the shadow of the immense pressure that sought to drown him? Before he knew it, he offered her a chance to work on the ranch, a decision born of desperation, but laced with curiosity. Yet, every interaction was a storm, winds clashing as they struggled to find a rhythm. Her carefree spirit sparked irritation and admiration in equal measure. Their differences festered like an open wound, both challenged by the very things that drove them. Duty shackled Jake, while rebellion led Lila. That morning he watched her struggle with a pioneer spirit, clamoring to break tradition while he remained fixated on the grind of reality. Her laughter melted into the gritty dust of the ranch, yet harmony felt elusive. Jake's heart raced with frustration, unsure of where land disputes ended and budding feelings began. The conflict tangled together, pulling at him day and night. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. But the stakes grew as the unease transformed into anguish, tightening like a noose around his chest. Lila's past crawled in like a storm, bringing whispers of disapproval that cut straight through him. What would he sacrifice for her? And what of his kin? Would her presence, her defiance, threaten his standing among the townsfolk? The pressure to conform wrestled with a burgeoning love that felt electric yet reckless. Jake stood at a precipice, feeling the sins of judgment seeping into his bones. Torn between the entrenched values his father held dear and these strange, thrilling desires, he sensed a storm brewing not just in the skies above, but within. An unseen visitor loomed on the horizon, ready to cast shadows over the promise of newfound love. His heart quickened, teetering on a knife's edge as he faced the uncertain path ahead. In a life already straining, would he dare embrace the wild journey lying before him, or would he let it all slip through his fingers? The following morning dawned with the clarity of vibrant sunlight spilling across the horizon. Jake stood at the edge of the pasture, an unyielding pulse of determination filling his veins. He couldn't ignore the unsettling tension that coiled around his chest anymore. Both the ranch and his life were at a crossroads. As he watched the haze of early light roll over the fields, he felt something shift within him, a subtle promise that maybe today would mark a turning point. Lila was there, a bright streak across the humdrum canvas of his world. She was bending low, scratching at the earth as she prepared the soil for some crops he'd been reluctant to plant. Her energy surged as if the land itself had responded to her fierce commitment. Yet, Jake's mind was perpetually racing. There was responsibility, legacy, tradition, all clenched tightly in his heart, battling against the lure of the audacious path she seemed to represent. He approached her, curiosity mingling with apprehension. Lila looked up, a grin splitting her face, momentarily dissipating the clouds of his uncertainty. The juxtaposition between her vitality and his stagnation was a jarring reality check. He felt challenged by her existence. At every turn, it was in the way she laughed that forced him to confront his own deep-rooted fears. "Hey, cowboy," she teased, her voice light and melodious. "Ready to loosen those reins a bit?" He frowned at the suggestion. "You can't just dance over the difficulties, Lila." With each word, a knot of frustration coiled tighter. Lila's reckless bravado was intoxicating but felt precarious. "You think I'm dancing?" she replied, her laughter fading, gaze steady. "I'm working, Jake. Working towards something that matters." Her intensity pierced through him, showcasing a willingness to challenge her circumstances. He admired that drive, even while resenting the discomfort it brought him. What was holding him back? The question looped in his mind like a refrain, searching for a melody to echo through his heart. Today, however, he could even allow himself to consider a shift. He proposed they work together on an innovative irrigation system he had been toying with but never had the courage to implement. He watched her eyes light up a spark that made his own heart flutter with unexpected excitement. "Let us give it a shot," he offered, testing the words on his tongue. "If it fails, well, we'll jump back to what we know." It was a calculated gamble on his part, but he felt the thrill course through him nonetheless. As they began tearing apart the old infrastructure, the laughter came easily, tension melted away. In those moments of reckless abandon, Jake found himself more than just a rancher shackled by legacy. He was a man willing to explore the multifaceted identity that was emerging just beyond the horizon of his rigid mindset. But as they worked, doubts simmered at the back of his mind. What would his mother think? What would the townsfolk say if it didn't work out, if they were deemed fools for messing with tradition? Jake felt the familiar gnaw of anxiety creeping back in, threatening to overshadow the liberation of the morning. "Are you okay?" Lila's voice cut through his conflicted thoughts. She paused to wipe her brow, her eyes capturing his turmoil with a piercing gaze. "I can't keep jumping through hoops," he confessed, his throat tightening. "What if this hurts me? My family, the ranch?" A shadow skated across her features, deepening the lines of determination. "Or maybe it'll help you grow," she replied simply, shrugging off the weighted expectations that had long bound him. In that moment, he understood it wouldn't just be a risk for the ranch. It was his very self he needed to confront. The path was strewn with uncertainty, but this was his only lifeline, a chance to fuse his legacy with desire instead of letting them remain locked in conflict. And just as hope began to chase out the shadows in his mind, a distant rumble echoed from the hills, the warning of storm clouds gathering. As he looked up, sensing the palpable tension before the downpour, his heart raced. Had they stirred the quiet landscape too much? The stakes were escalating. The time had come for Jake to face not only the storm, but the very life he was trying to protect. Would he stand resolute, or would he change course entirely? The rumble of thunder was a stark reminder that the storm was not just a meteorological event, it was a metaphor for the internal tempest raging within Jake. As the wind picked up, swirling bits of earth and dust around them, he felt the growing weight of expectation press harder against his chest. The decision to move forward with Lila's innovative plan was liberating, but with each flash of lightning, doubt flickered just as brightly. "Jake," Lila called out, her voice laced with urgency. "We need to secure this old structure before the rain hits." Her focus was unwavering, but Jake could see the faint lines of worry etched across her brow. He admired her tenacity. It reflected the very spirit he was attempting to summon within himself. He stepped forward, his hands reaching for tools. Yet even as he worked, his mind was tethered by the chains of possibility and fear. The purpose they were working toward suddenly loomed larger. This wasn't team merely about irrigation anymore. It was a test of his courage, strength, and core identity. Could he actually forge a path that blended both innovation and tradition? Or was he destined to live forever under the weight of his family's past? As they secured the first beam against the winds, he asked, more to himself than to her, "What if this doesn't work, Lila? What if we're wrong? What if we're right?" She didn't hesitate, her response slicing through the doubt like a knife. "You're afraid of what they say, but this is about more than them, Jake. It's about you. The ranch can only grow if you're willing to grow with it." For a moment, her words resonated deeply, a call to arms against his own fear. He inhaled sharply, deciding then and there to lean into the chaos surrounding him both inside and out. The power of transformation surged within him, but the storm clouds loomed ever closer, mirroring the emotional storm he was entering. With each passing moment, they fought against the delays brought on by the incoming weather, working tirelessly to shore up defenses while the world around them darkened ominously. The very earth beneath felt alive, as if recognizing the profound shift taking place in him. Corkscrews of ambition twisted and turned in his chest, battling against the static dread that had defined him for so long. He tightened a bolt. An unexpected flash of resolve ignited a wave of clarity. What if I establish my own way, innovating while respecting the roots? That surge of creativity had lain dormant far too long, overshadowed by familial obligations and the rusting weight of tradition. "Exactly," Lila exclaimed, tossing her hair back, a fierce spark in her eye. "This is your chance to redefine what it means to be a rancher. The legacy isn't just about following in footsteps, it's about leaving your own mark." Her passion was infectious, and in that instant, he recognized the depths of his own conditioning, the fear woven into every aspect of his life. It was exhilarating, the realization that perhaps he didn't need permission to redefine his role on his own terms. In Lila's presence, he transcended labels, began to envision not just survival, but thriving a landscape rich with potential awaiting cultivation. But then, as he turned to speak again, the first drops of rain began to fall. Heavy and relentless, they poured down in sheets, soaking through everything in an instant. The storm swept over them like a tide, each drop amplifying the intensity of his decision. Would he be swept away in fear, or would he claim the moment for his own? "Jake!" Lila shouted above the rising winds. "We can't stop now." And in the heart of that tempest, a new resolve emerged. He would not retreat. Today, he would not be a mere spectator of his fate, but the architect of his destiny. As they dove into their work with renewed vigor, wild exhilaration overtook him. In the eye of the storm, Jake found a sense of purpose, a drive to combat not just the forces of nature, but the unseen forces that had kept him locked in place for too long. He was here to redefine his story. But just as he began to grasp this powerful transformation, a piercing shriek echoed from the direction of the barn. The sound was primal, filled with fear and urgency. What was happening? The ground shifted beneath him once again, prompting a stark realization. He was about to face a challenge far greater than the storm. The real test was just beginning. Adrenaline surged through Jake as he sprinted toward the barn, the chaotic symphony of wind and rain becoming a backdrop to the immediate crisis. The pierce of that scream, raw and unfiltered, had sparked something primal inside him, a mixture of fear and protective instinct that ignited his every muscle. Each step was heavy with the weight of responsibility, the storm mirroring the tumult in his heart. As he approached the barn, he could make out Lila's silhouette against the flickering light of the lantern inside. Her features were tense, illuminated by the erratic flashes of lightning cutting through the downpour outside. The air around him buzzed with uncertainty. Was this a test or a culmination of all the decisions he had been wrestling with? "Lila!" he shouted, struggling to be heard over the relentless drum of rain. "What happened? There's something wrong with the horses." Her voice cracked, urgency swelling. "They're spooked. We need to get them secured before they break loose." Instinctively, Jake felt a rush of clarity amid the chaos. He had always shied away from making decisive choices in pressure situations, defaulting to a wait-and-see approach. But that was the past, and he was done being held captive by old habits. This was a moment to act, and he could no longer afford to question his instincts. This way, Lila motioned, grabbing a flashlight and leading him inside. The barn was a cacophony of whinnies and stomps, the horses agitated by the storm's fury. Jake's heart raced. He could feel the pulse of raw energy in the air. "We have to calm them down," he said, taking a deep breath to steady his nerves. He observed Lila moving smoothly between the stalls, her presence a soothing balm amid the volatility. She carried an assurance that Jake had admired, and now he needed to embody that same strength. Working side by side with Lila, he grabbed a halter, his movements becoming fluid as he approached a skittish mare. The tension in the air provoked a sense of urgency, but beneath it lay an unmistakable resolve. He felt the shift inside him solidify. This was his moment. With a gentle touch, he reached out to the mare, whispering words of calm. It wasn't just about the horse. This was him breaking a cycle of doubt, bridging the gap between who he was and who he aspired to be. Each breath felt like a promise to himself, a commitment to lean into his evolving identity. "Easy now, girl," Jake spoke softly, a kindness in his voice designed to penetrate the frantic energy. The mare hesitated, her eyes wide, but slowly began to respond. With delicate patience, he slid the halter over her head and felt a surge of triumph as she relaxed beneath his touch. Lila's eyes sparkled with encouragement, each moment amplifying the connection they shared. It was a shared silence, punctuated only by the sounds of the storm and the horses settling down around them. Each satisfied snore from the animals felt like a victory, a testament to their collaborative effort. With every horse secured, Jake felt the layers of inhibition peel away. He wasn't merely reacting to the storm. He was confronting it head-on, transforming fear into action. The lesson was profound, and palpable courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. As the last halter was secured, a sudden stillness fell over the barn. The cacophony subsided, silence enveloping them, as if the world outside paused, holding its collective breath. In that moment, Jake realized the significance of what had just transpired. He was no longer confined by the shadows of his past. But as he turned to share this epiphany with Lila, a deafening crash echoed just outside. The barn trembled under the force of it, a stark reminder that while he had begun to harness his inner strength, the true storm still lay ahead. What now? He thought, dread settling in once more. The test of his resolve was far from over. The silence that enveloped the barn shattered as Jake's heart raced again, this time not just from adrenaline, but from sheer uncertainty. He and Lila stood locked in the moment, tension crackling between them, the aftermath of their success with the horses eclipsed by the ominous reality outside. The crash resonated deeply, a violent reminder of the world beyond their little fortress. What if the storm damages the roof? Jake thought, panic edging his clarity. The foundation of the barn might be strong, but nature's fury had a way of revealing vulnerabilities. His instinct was to protect not only the animals, but Lila too. He glanced at her, gauging her reaction. Her breath was steadier than his, a contrast to the rising tide of his anxiety. As another rumble of thunder rolled through the air, Jake realized he had to act. The moment wasn't just demanding resilience. It demanded swift decision-making. "We should check the roof," he stated, though his own voice trembled with the weight of the unknown. Lila nodded, determination glazing her features. They moved toward the barn's entrance, the door creaking under the force of the wind. Beyond, nature roared, but Jake felt different this time. He wasn't slipping back into passivity, weighed down by indecisiveness. Instead, he stepped into the breach. The rain lashed at his face like 1,000 tiny needles as he and Lila emerged into the storm. "Stay close," he shouted, already devising a plan in his mind. They had to assess the damage quickly, secure what they could, and regroup. As he climbed onto the roof, each movement ignited a burgeoning sense of competence within him. 2 weeks ago, he would never have considered braving this tempest. Yet here he was, willing to face whatever challenge lay ahead. Working alongside Lila, he felt something shift deeper inside, a commitment to not just his own growth, but a burgeoning alignment with her unyielding spirit. Together, they navigated the chaos, securing tarps where the roof threatened to buckle. "Got it!" Lila exclaimed, her eyes wide with exhilaration as she tied down a flap that had come loose. Jake couldn't help but feel a rush seeing her thrive amid the turmoil, and it propelled him further. He reached for the next section, pushing away his lingering doubts. But while they fought against the elements, he noticed a flash of fear in Lila's eyes as she glanced at a patch of the sky illuminated by lightning. In that moment, a surge of clarity jolted through him. This was not merely about confronting the storm. It was about understanding resilience in its various forms. Lila had her fears, and Jake was now positioned as her anchor, just as she had been his. "Lila," he shouted over the deafening noise, his voice steady. "We can handle this together." She met his gaze, the storm swirling around them, and Jake saw the whisper of doubt begin to lift. They exchanged a small smile, one that said more than words could. It was a moment of shared resolve, fortified by the trials they faced, forging a bond that felt unbreakable. As they worked, the wind threatened to topple their efforts, lending urgency to the task at hand. But Jake no longer felt overwhelmed. He felt empowered by the storm, by the realization that opposition could galvanize strength rather than diminish it. Just as they secured the last tarp, a blinding light turned the world into stark shadow. A sudden flash of lightning struck nearby, jolting both of them into action. The energies of the storm and their burgeoning connection sparked anew within him, igniting a sense of purpose he had only just begun to fathom. But as he descended from the rooftop, Lila stepped back. Her expression morphed from empowerment to something else entirely, something fragile, something profound. "Jake, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice barely cutting through the howling winds. The world around him faded for a moment, leaving only her words vibrating with unsaid implications. "About what?" he asked, and a knot twisted in his stomach, sensing they were about to make a leap into uncharted territory. The blooming tension hung in the air like the calm before a storm, and for Jake, nothing could have felt more daunting or more exhilarating. Jake's heart thudded in his chest as he stared at Lila, the storm's fury momentarily shattered by the weight of her gaze. It was a stark contrast. The chaos outside offered no room for hesitation, while the silence between them felt overwhelmingly significant. What could she possibly want to discuss? He felt vulnerability creeping in, but he also knew this was a rare chance to deepen their connection. "Jake," she started, her voice low but forceful, almost drowned out by the wind. "I've seen how you handle challenges. You face everything head-on, even when it's scary." The compliment hung in the air, yet it felt weighted, like a prelude to a revelation. Her eyes sparkled with a mix of admiration and something Jake couldn't quite place that he swallowed hard, pushing past the fluttering uncertainty within him. "I wouldn't have gotten here without you," he replied, wanting to convey the weight of his appreciation. "You've opened my eyes to what is possible." But Lila was still holding something back, and the tension in her expression pushed Jake further into his own thoughts. Who was he becoming in all this? He started this journey riddled with doubt, and now he found himself driving headlong into storms figurative and literal. He realized this transformation was no longer just about the ranch or the horses, nor was it confined to the physical boundaries of the barn. It was shaping his very identity. "Jake, I want to tell you about my family," Lila continued, her voice slightly wavering. "About everything I've run away from." Her breath hitched, a ripple of emotion reflecting in her eyes. As the words began to flow from her lips, Jake felt layers of her past unfolding, each revelation carrying the weight of unexpressed fears and hidden struggles. How did someone so fierce and vibrant come from a world that dimmed their light? He remembered the first time he'd seen Lila with those wild horses, unyielding and free. In the midst of turmoil, he saw her truth shining brighter than ever. Yet beneath that bravado lay shadows he hadn't fully understood until now. "Trust me," she added softly. "I'm scared you might walk away once you hear it all." A chill danced up Jake's spine, shaking loose fragments of his own memories of feeling insignificant beneath the expectations of others, of the struggle for acceptance and understanding. No, he wouldn't walk away. As he faced the tempest outside, he recognized this moment was pivotal, like a crossroad demanding honesty not just from Lila, but from himself. "I want tea," he said, resolve firming in his voice. "Whatever it is, I'm here and I'm listening." Just like that, he could almost feel the air shift. It didn't escape him that this conversation was as crucial as weathering the storm on the roof. In that moment of raw vulnerability, he understood that personal resilience wasn't merely about confrontation. It was about deep connection and the courage to embrace the truths that shaped each person. As Lila opened her heart, his instincts shifted toward a new kind of engagement. Every word she shared was an arrangement of shared strength, a reflection of pain and courage that bound them closer. And though Jake had wanted to feel strengthened in protecting her, he found himself similarly exposed, stepping into a realm where vulnerability became synonymous with strength. Suddenly, there was a loud crack in the distance, a deafening clash like the sound of the heavens splitting apart. It pierced through Lila's revelations, pulling Jake back to the present. The storm was escalating. He could see dark, roiling clouds gathering above them, like forces hinting at something vast and untamed. He knew they had to return to the barn, to continue protecting what they had taken so long to build. Yet, even as he grasped for the rope of responsibility, the tether of Lila's revelations hung heavily in the air. They were both standing on the precipice of transformation, grappling with the storms not just around them, but within themselves. "Lila," he said, urgency threading through his voice as they began to move back. "Let us get through this. You can share more as we work." Her nod was quick, but her eyes held a mixture of trepidation and resoluteness. Heavy raindrops fell like the weight of their burdens, and in their descent, Jake recognized the power of their joint struggle. Unearthing honest emotions would mean embracing one another more completely. Together they rushed back, the howls of the storm underscoring a collective understanding that lessons of the heart often emerge through chaos. Just as they approached the barn, Jake's mind flickered with anticipation for what might follow. Outside, the dark clouds loomed ominously, and he felt a deep, gnawing realization settling in his gut. This moment was a launching point, not only for understanding Lila, but for unraveling the burdens of his past, too. The storm was far from over, and as Jake urged Lila inside, he could sense deeper tempests lurking just beyond the horizon of their connection. What would their next challenge reveal? And would the unveiling of their truths summon unforeseen strength or lay bare vulnerable edges that could either bond them irrevocably or tear them apart? The barn door creaked ominously as Jake and Lila ducked inside, the storm's howling winds fading to a dull roar. The familiar scent of hay and leather flooded his senses, grounding him amidst the chaos swirling in his mind. They stood amidst shadows and shelter, yet Jake felt an unsettling current of unresolved tension surging between them. The storm outside paled in comparison to the one brewing inside. He tightened his grip around a pitchfork he'd instinctively grabbed as they entered. With every crack of thunder, the weight of their conversation pressed down on him. They needed to work, to focus on the tasks at hand, but Lila's words lingered like lightning in his mind. Who was she, really? And what did her past hold? "Jake, can you help with the stalls?" she asked, pulling him from his spiraling thoughts. "Of course," he replied, trying to shake off the questions swirling inside. They moved to the first stall, and as he began shoveling hay, he watched Lila's movements, a fluid blend of confidence and care as she swept the floor. Each stroke of the pitchfork was meditative for Jake, yet fragmented thoughts about resilience and vulnerability danced in his mind. He was learning to confront his fears, to be open. But could he handle what Lila might reveal? "Can I ask you something?" he ventured, breaking the silence. "Sure, anything," she said, glancing up with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. "What made you run away?" The question slipped out before he could take it back, but the vulnerability in his own tone surprised him. He needed answers. Lila paused, the broom hovering in midair. A flicker of something passed across her, features an acknowledgement of the weight of the past. "It's complicated," she finally said, resuming her task. "I thought I could outrun it, but running only got me so far." He felt the gravity of her words. Running something he'd considered many times in his life. A desire to escape the suffocating expectations and disappointments. But that wasn't a solution. He had learned that the hard way. And now, Jake prodded gently, wishing to peel back the layers of her deflection. "Now, I'm here, trying to figure things out," she replied, her voice steady yet laced with vulnerability. "But every time I think I'm ready to confront it, there's this fear that holds me back." Fear, it resonated deep within him. How often had he allowed fear to dictate his choices? As he wrestled with his thoughts, a surge of determination pulsed through him. "Fear can be crippling," Jake admitted, setting aside the pitchfork, stepping closer. "But it can also be a catalyst for change. You've faced so much just being here, growing the way you have. It takes courage." Lila's gaze met his, and in that moment, something shifted, a shared understanding blooming. He wasn't just speaking about her. He was also unveiling his own layered fears. "Do you think we can conquer them?" she asked, a whisper of hope threading through her voice. "I think we have to try," he replied, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Maybe facing these storms together could lead us to brighter days. As they continued to clean the stalls in tandem, Jake felt a sense of unity anchoring them. Each motion became an extension of the conversations they had yet to fully explore, the revelations waiting just beneath the surface. Yet he sensed something deeper lurking in the shadows of their shared experience, a looming confrontation, not only with Lila's past, but with the demons of his own. Just as they finished up, a peculiar sound echoed from outside. A rumble lingered longer than the rest. It wasn't thunder. Jake exchanged a glance. With Lila, the dread reflected in her eyes mirrored his own. "What was that?" she breathed, an edge of fear slicing through their connection. "I don't know," he responded, a knot tightening in his stomach. "Let's check it out." Together, they stepped outside into the heavy rain, hearts thudding louder than the storm itself, both aware that this could be yet another test of their evolving resolve. As uncertainty spiraled in the shadows of the barn, Jake's sense of shifting identity took a new twist. A confrontation beckoned, one that would unravel hidden fears that they could either face together or be consumed by. What threat awaited him beyond the safe confines of the barn? Would this newfound bond withstand the next storm that threatened to unearth buried truths? The wind howled as Jake and Lila stepped into the downpour, the rain hammering against the ground like a steady drumbeat. Each gust seemed to amplify the tension in the air, heightening his awareness of what lay ahead. He clutched his jacket tighter around him, a futile attempt to shield himself from the chill that seeped through both fabric and skin. As they reached the edge of the barn, Jake squinted through the sheets of rain, straining to discern shapes in the storm. The unease bubbling in his stomach merged with curiosity. What had caused that ominous sound? He felt an urge to protect Lila, as if her presence alone was enough to keep the darkness at bay. "Stay close," he said, moving instinctively toward her. It was more than just a physical arrangement. This closeness was his way of expressing solidarity against whatever unknown loomed ahead. The darkness shrouded the fields, whispering secrets that felt just out of reach. Yet, amid the fierce elements of nature, Jake found his mind drawn inward, reflecting on his own resolve. What fears had he been carrying, and how often had he let them dictate his life? Lila's presence was a reminder that vulnerability was not something to hide or avoid, but a bridge to deeper connections. Suddenly, a figure emerged like a ghost from the gray haze. Jake's heart raced as he squinted harder, recognizing the silhouette of a man, Max, his rival, somebody whose presence at the ranch had always ignited competitive flames in both of them. "Jake," Max called out, his voice slicing through the howling wind. "Thought you'd be holed up safe in the barn." "That was the plan," Jake replied, tempering his irritation. Max had an uncanny ability to provoke him, bring out a side he preferred to keep buried. "Always hiding. It's never surprising," Max continued, a smirk playing on his lips. "You're good at that. Just like her." His eyes flicked to Lila, and Jake felt a surge of defensive anger on her behalf. Lila shifted uneasily beside Jake, her posture tight. She was taking in the situation, processing it with calm caution that surprised him. "Enough, Max," Lila interjected, her voice steady. It was a moment of revelation for Jake. Here was Lila, not the fragile girl he had imagined, but a woman determined to stand her ground. "You don't know what we're facing, or what you're running from," Max shot back, his voice thick with accusation. Jake felt it again, the tight knot of emotions, the fear of exposure, the sting of vulnerability. "We're not running from anything, Max. We're confronting, and how exactly do you plan to confront the past? Hiding in a barn doesn't change anything," Max interrupted, his words dripping with disdain. Jake clenched his jaw, the urge to defend Lila roaring up within him. But as he fought to articulate his retort, something deeper surfaced. What did he truly want to convey? Was it about defending her, or about discovering how to embrace their shared vulnerabilities? "Maybe it's not just about hiding," Jake said slowly, his mind racing. "What if it's about facing what scares us out here? What if it's an opportunity for growth?" Max's confidence faltered for just a moment, uncertainty creeping into his features. "You think that facing fears changes the past? It doesn't, but it could change us," Lila interjected, her eyes locking onto Jake's. He could feel the support in her gaze. Her bravery lent him strength that a silence settled among them, each grappling with the implications of the confrontation. Fear mingled with determination. In the tension, Jake recognized a pivotal crossroads. This clash wasn't merely a rivalry, but an invitation to evolve, to shed layers of doubt and confront deeper truth. As the rain poured around them, Jake felt a shift, an unspoken challenge binding them together, an unyielding call to redefine what courage meant in their lives and relationship. Lila was no longer just a reflection of his fears. She was a partner in discovery. "Let us find out together what facing our past can do," he said, his voice resonating with a newfound clarity. The storm raged on, but in that moment, something cracked within Jake's conviction. He was stepping into not just the uncharted territory of their emotions, but also the man he was meant to be, one willing to confront whatever lay ahead. What further revelations awaited them as they pushed through this storm of fears? Would they both emerge renewed, or would their resolve crumble against the weight of the unknown? The rain persisted, a relentless barrage that blurred the line between reality and the tumult of Jake's emotions. He could feel the cold seep into his bones. Yet wasn't the wet chill that gripped him. It was the immediacy of confronting what lay ahead. Jake's thoughts raced, the swell of a familiar anxiety giving way to determination. Lila was right there, grounding him in the storm. Max's words hit hard, didn't they? Lila said, her eyes reflecting a mixture of empathy and understanding. The sincerity in her tone made Jake realize their shared vulnerabilities were not weaknesses, but the very fabric of their strength. "It's just frustrating," Jake admitted, his frustration morphing into a resolve he hadn't expected. "I've always felt like I had to measure up to him, you know? But maybe this isn't about him at all." Lila looked at him, a flicker of surprise crossing her features. "What do you mean?" I always define myself in relation to others, his success, his confidence. But in facing my fears, I'm starting to see that I need to embrace who I am outside of this rivalry." The clarity of his thoughts felt liberating. He never believed that confrontation led to freedom until now. A flicker of hope sparked in Lila's gaze. "What does that look like for you?" Jake pondered, recalling the nights spent in an agonizing script of self-doubt. I need to stop letting the past dictate my choices. It's not just about him or anything else that has held me back. It's about taking control of my own narrative. The thought resonated deeply, igniting a fire he and T realized he was capable of. Yet another layer of learning presented itself. The realization of personal narrative as a mechanism for growth. The understanding rolled over him like the very waves of rain, refreshing, but relentless. Let us prove him wrong, not just to show him, but to show ourselves. The weight of those words hung in the air, charged with a shared intent. Lila nodded, her expression a blend of admiration and anticipation. With every passing moment, Jake felt his resolve strengthen. As he locked eyes with Lila, he recognized that she wasn't merely a partner in this moment, but a catalyst for change. We'll face our past together, no more avoidance. It's time to stand up not just for each other, but for ourselves. Lila stepped closer, her resolve intertwining with his. Are we ready to leave the barn then? The idea sent a rush of adrenaline through Jake's veins. Part of him wanted to stay cocooned in the shelter of the familiar, where fear could hold no sway. However, another part echoed the awakening realization that facing his fears could wield transformative power. Yeah, it's time, Jake confirmed, a newfound steadiness coloring his voice. As they moved together into the blustery world outside, Jake felt the storm around them take on a new significance. The wind whipped at his face, soaking him further, but instead of feeling weighed down, Jake felt the surge of freedom. The weight of expectation lifted as he acknowledged the journey was his to choose, not dictated by the echoes of Max's taunts or any haunted past. With every determined step, Jake imagined drawing closer to a world unbound by fear, a world where their shared experiences cultivated an unshakable bond. Lila looked up at him, her gaze fierce, and in that moment, he realized that together they were a force, resilient against whatever tempest lay ahead. But as they ventured into the uncharted territory of their emotions, Jake contemplated the tension still thick in the air between his past struggles and the new path they were forging. What did it mean to confront those ghosts together? He felt the storm still raging as they pressed on, but uncertainty coiled tightly around his heart and instilled an urgent question. Would they be brave enough to face the fallout from their confrontation, or would the tempest of their fears prove too great? The storm had raged all night, but as dawn broke, the sun stretched its golden fingers across the horizon, illuminating the battered ranch and the moisture-soaked earth. Jake stood on the porch, staring at the aftermath of what had been both a literal and metaphorical tempest. He had faced Max, confronted his fears, and uncovered a resilience within himself that felt invigorating. The night before, Jake had learned that true growth often emerges through turmoil, much like a field rejuvenated by rain. With Lila beside him, he had stood firm against the storm, ready to face whatever challenges loomed after the clouds cleared. Her unwavering strength, coupled with the revelations they shared, had pushed him to barrier-breaking discoveries not just about the ranch, but about himself. He inhaled deeply, savoring the fresh air mingled with the scent of damp earth and renewed potential. Every blade of grass shimmered, serving as a reminder that life continued, renewed with purpose. Lila emerged from the barn, a vision of strength and energy, and as she joined him on the porch, Jake felt a solidification of their bond of partnership that he now realized was essential to his growth. "That's a mess we have to clean up," she said lightly, her eyes sparkling with mischief despite the work that lay ahead. They shared a knowing smile that carried the weight of last night's challenges, each understanding what it meant to face their pasts and redefine their futures. "Yeah, but I'm ready to rip off some old structures and build something better," Jake replied with newfound confidence, already imagining how they would implement the irrigation system and start preparing the land for planting. The fear of failure was still present, but it was now juxtaposed with a burning desire to innovate and create a sustainable legacy. As they got to work, they moved together rhythmically, laughter spilling between them whenever a chunk of debris flew beyond the fence, or when the horses, calmer now, peered at them curiously, seemingly aware of the transformation at play. Every moment spent in labor felt energizing rather than burdensome, a reflection that he was no longer merely a caretaker chained to responsibilities, but an innovator in his own right. "Jake, I think we should consider adding a greenhouse," Lila suggested as she pulled up weeds from a nearby plot. "That's a brilliant idea," he replied, surprised at how natural and invigorating it felt to consider the ranch not just as a weighty family legacy, but as a living, breathing ecosystem capable of fostering new life and opportunities. Concrete plans began to form. Together, they would cultivate organic crops, making the ranch not just a business, but a place of community gathering and learning. As they laid out their dreams across the abundant land, the thrill of potential overtook any lingering anxiety. This was their joint path, a collaboration fueled by both their strengths and passions. Recognition came swiftly as they shared their ideas in town, venturing beyond the boundaries of their old identities. The townsfolk, who had once doubted Jake's enduring connection to the ranch, began to see the excitement in his eyes, the determination in his voice. With every new plan they articulated, his confidence solidified, a mutual respect built with Lila transformed into a recognition of his role as a leader. No longer was he just Jake, the son of a rancher. He was Jake, a pioneer of his own vision. Weeks turned into months, and it wasn't just the crops that blossomed. The respect for their mutual endeavors planted seeds of newfound relationships among the townspeople. Together, Jake and Lila had succeeded in showcasing a modern approach to agriculture while demonstrating that tradition doesn't have to stifle innovation. They became not just custodians of the land, but teachers, encouraging others to embrace change. That on a warm summer evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, Jake sat with Lila on the porch of the ranch house. Looking out over the fields, a sense of deep satisfaction washed over him. This was not merely a job or an obligation. It was a legacy redefined, rooted in collaboration and authenticity. Jake felt anchored in a newfound identity, one built on vulnerability, honesty, and unyielding connection. He no longer feared the expectations of the past. Instead, he had mastered the vibrant interplay of tradition and innovation. Hand in hand with Lila, he had not only achieved a personal transformation, but had established himself as a leader ready to face the future. With a confident grin, he turned to her. "Ready for another day of forging ahead?" Lila smiled back, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Always." His heart swelled with pride, not only for what they had accomplished together, but for who he had become. Jake had not merely inherited a ranch. He had conquered his fears, built a thriving partnership, and redefined what it meant to honor a legacy without being bound by it. Now was the moment to reach back out to the community and invite them to witness this transformation. He grabbed his phone, grinning at the thought of sharing their story of how courage in the face of fear can sow not just change, but abundance. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now, and don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.